Hi, my name is Abigail Garcia, and today I'm going to be presenting my case study 4. So here is the website. Let me move it up to the top. So here is the basic, the beginning. Same as always, scrolling down with student learning objectives, about me. Here is my case study 1. Scrolling down a bit. And then we pass my notes, case study 2. Then here we go, case study 4. We skipped case study 3, so here's case study 4. Here's the original case study, the beginning. So moving down here, I have a little diagram of where the pain is said to be, and then here I have like a little mini timeline of what is mentioned here at the beginning with her pain and her progression of pain. Here I have the diagrams for the exercise. I have the phase 1, and in the assessment plan I explain the exercise prescriptions where I talk about the different phases. So here's phase 1, then here's phase 2, and in my exercise prescription I talk about how this is phase 1, and then the phase 2 is phase 1 and phase 2 combined, exercise-wise or exercise activity-wise. So moving down, here's my assessment plan. So here I take into consideration her symptoms, her assessments that are given, and her timeline. And I came up with three possible diagnoses, like I say here. The possible diagnosis that I came up with was medial tibial stress syndrome, tibia stress fracture, or repetitive stress injury. So out of these three, I began to kind of process elimination based on her symptoms. So the first one I completely just took out of the question was repetitive stress injury, because that one was too broad of an injury. There's two different types, and one of them was carpal tunnel, and at the top of my head I cannot remember what the other one was as an example, and that one I just seemed to see, I figured it to be less likely. So then I was between the medial tibial stress syndrome and the tibia stress fracture. So from here I kind of just focused on the different types of symptoms and what fit more to the patient, and I go into depth really on my assessment plan and how I decided based on the type of symptoms of the medial tibial stress syndrome that I felt like that was the best fit for it. It's also known as shin splints, so if I refer to it as shin splints throughout the video, you know I'm talking about medial tibial stress syndrome. So here is a video that I used that really helped me kind of eliminate the other two diagnoses, because I felt like this really helped me kind of picture medial tibial stress syndrome and how I felt like it fit to the patient's symptoms. So here I have my exercise prescription and how I really came up with these diagrams. So I decided to cut it into two phases. So the first phase, we're really focusing on strengthening the weak spots. So in her initial assessment, we see how she has weak hips, weak core strength, and really weak abduction, and weak gluteus medius and minius. Sorry if I mispronounced that. So here in this phase, we're kind of working on strengthening that. And in phase 2, we're still working on strengthening, but then we're focusing on a transition into running again to slowly. So we don't run into the same problem of re-injury of medial tibial stress syndrome, because in my research I found that medial tibial stress syndrome really happens when you just go straight into full-on heavy workouts. So that's what we see with this athlete. What happened to her is that she hadn't trained at all, and she went into straight to full-on cross-country workouts, and she without previous training. So that really made an impact on her. So that's why another reason why I kind of double down into medial tibial stress syndrome. So going down here, I have my little paragraph, and here I have my case study questions on how I really answered. So some of these are kind of repeated in my assessment plan and my exercise prescription. So I still kind of went into depth. I talked about how COVID would have impacted. It's kind of everything's really virtual. So I talked about how initially you'll probably meet with your doctor virtually, and then he'll tell you to come and in-person visits will probably be limited, which could be a downfall. But what can you do? It's challenging times. So going down, here I talk about how the transition athlete back to training for track. I talk about that here with my different phases and how it will be beneficial and helpful for the athlete. And then going down here, I have my reflection and how I approach this case. I really approach this case the same way I approached kind of the first one. I worked on putting myself in the shoes of a DPT, and the idea of getting 3 diagnoses really helped me ensure that I was picking the correct diagnosis. After all, I'm not licensed, I'm not certified, so I really don't know if I chose the right my diagnosis, but I felt a little bit more confident on the diagnosis I chose because I was able to see 3 different injuries, and I was able to kind of use process elimination. I felt a little bit more confident, so I felt like taking that approach rather than the first time where I kind of just doubled down to one diagnoses. I feel a little more confident on what I chose. And then down here I have my references, and I'm going to add what I've done for the review for the exam. I have not finished it yet, but this will be added here hopefully, or at least what I have done. So this is my case study 4, and that's it for this case study. Thank you.